Gentlemen, we stand here today, and ladies, of course, uh, we are gathered here today for a very special moment, a moment of remembrance and memory in a very important cast member that could not be here today. His name is Aziz, also known as Darkrai Q8. Link will be in the chat whenever I feel like putting it there. I'm sorry. He had surgery today. It was the sugar. It did him wrong, and he didn't make it to the stream. He didn't make it to the stream. And I really wanted him to make it to the stream because I wanted him to tell us all about it. And it's not fair because if you know anything about weight and the way people struggle with it, you have to understand that donuts are not the answer. But chronic surgery is. And I'm sorry, all of you. I did not mean to tear up this early, but we're going to be talking about obesity today. And I want everybody to know that if you are getting bullied for your weight, fucking do something about it, like Aziz did, because he's a man, right? He's a grown adult who, yes, likes Chinese cartoons, but he also has a real side to him. A side that decided to say, fuck you to the sugar. I'm going to take control of my own destiny, and I'm going to pay thousands of dollars possibly to get all this off of me so that I can rebrand a new man and return to the Salt Grinder, a better example for the fans who we know come to us for that. So with that, gentlemen and ladies, again, welcome to the Salt Grinder, where respect is a suggestion.
So,
mind you, epilepsy warning.
Yes.
You have been warned.
You don't want to end up like this actor that died in his sleep.
So yeah. I don't know the term exactly for the surgery.
Gastric bypass.
That thing.
Yeah, gastric bypass.
And essentially, it reduces the size of the stomach, the way I understand it.
Yeah, they reduce more than 50%. It's like 62% of the stomach.
So the reason Aziz partook in the operation was he was always against it in general. He never wanted to take it. But if you guys remember a few episodes ago that one of the private companies he wanted to have it, like he wanted to be hired in, wanted him badly because he passed like with flying colors all the tests they gave him, but they were unsure about his weight. So he started the diet throughout the past 2 months in order to lose enough weight so they would accept him. After a while, they like a few days ago, they gave him an ultimatum: if you lose 15 kilograms in 2 months, we're gonna hire you. 15 kilograms in 2 months is death. It's a death sentence. So Aziz decided to partake in the surgery that he dislikes to get the job and secure himself a better future. So yeah, for everybody, a clap to Aziz for manning even against his own principles in order to secure himself a future that's good, mainly for his daughter. So yeah, I wouldn't have done it myself. Yep.
Put your hats down for Aziz, our fallen soldier, who's about to get healed and be another man, or drop another man.
But that does bring up an interesting topic we found, an interesting article. I'm gonna link
Shout
it
out
down.
to Darkrai Q8.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
I'm gonna link the article down on the thingy over here, so people would see it. And the basics of the article goes to the effect of uranium affecting obesity rates in Kuwait. Now, where does the uranium come from? The uranium comes from the Gulf War. Basically, the U.S. used bombs that contains traces of uranium, and according to the article, the researchers took a few saliva samples and compared it to people who got diabetes before and after, and realized that there is a correlation. The sample size is 100, so it is fairly substantial. But basically what it says is that Kuwaiti people it may not just be the food. It may be a few extra elements that makes us extra susceptible to being fat. Kuwait, I think, has the highest obesity rate out of all the world, or something, or at least they're very high. And
Yeah, because they are the smallest, one of the smallest countries. Uh, that's the
yeah,
first thing.
in the end, it is a percentage, but again, obesity rates are very high. And a lot of people
Yeah,
attribute it to fast food, a lot of people attribute it to other things, but it may also have something to do with soil and all of that. Now, the implications of this article is not just about obesity. The implications is also about, which is a topic I want to discuss further after this, which is, okay, are we reaching the point where any war is bad, not just fucking nuclear disaster? Like anything has long-term effects that may affect people, but that's a topic for another time. Let's talk obesity. Now that we know that this exists, does it, first, will people start suing the US for their obesity? Another thing to the US has to apologize for, black crimes, now fat people. Second thing, uh, does this give a new dimension to fat shaming, which is what I'm more interested in? What do you guys think?
Well, let me answer the U.S. question very simply.
go for it because I will have to
U.S.
do.
may apologize, but it's going to be the Demi Lovato type apology. Sorry, not that.
Yeah. It's gonna be. I know nothing will come out of it. I just love saying it, mainly because, like, if you think of fat people, like, fat people are always coming up with excuses. Like, they're always like, they're never to blame. So that gives them a new excuse. Oh, it's uranium, man. That's why I can't stop shoving food in my face. But the thing stand. The thing still stands. Eat a salad. Go for a walk. You're good. People refuse to eat salads.
Wait, this is a horrible excuse uh, for a lot of facts because when the war happened, the Gulf War, it was a long time ago. It wouldn't affect the youth at this time. Again, military weapons were not advanced enough to use uranium. Uranium has a very high blast radius, which can eliminate cities, as we can say. Uh, if the oil fields were burned, they wouldn't even produce uranium or any kind of radiation content. It would produce lead, which is a very high content in oil, and the lead can be turned into a complex sugar, which okay can mess your body physically and mentally, but it wouldn't affect your pancreas and make you eat junk food for your life. That's my point.
Well, the way they described it is basically the radiation from the weapons, although it's in a low percentage, but it exists according to the study. What it does is it's basically the breaking down of complex sugars. It becomes way more difficult. So if you eat something like fast food, the chances of it being burned instead of stored decreases substantially. So, in essence, the Kuwaiti population, because of this radiation, if they eat a sandwich, they get fatter if compared if you ate it from somewhere else. That's what they're trying to say. Uh, again, I don't think it's a high contributor. Uh,
It's not.
but it's interesting mainly because of how many diabetics we have. Like, it could be more towards diabetes than towards obesity. Now, I know they're related, but we do have a lot of people getting diabetes even though they're not fat. So maybe that's something we need to focus on. But what's generally, I'm just afraid that one day people will start using this as an excuse. I'm thick boned, I'm uranium influenced,
Well,
Put that on a
uh,
shirt.
to put another example, one of my brothers from my father's side, and his first wife, uh, he has uh, he has complications with digestion sugar and stuff. I don't think it's a type of diabetes, but it's mostly associated with stress. A lot of families in Kuwait, they they do get a diabetic person from mostly stress and anxiety, including a lot of my cousins and my uncles. But I do not think for a fact that it is by radiation. Radiation, okay, it does mutate your genes and make cancerous tumors when exposed to it too much, but it doesn't, and it will never fuck up your pancreas and make you get diabetes. You know?
it's one of these things that when I read, I laughed my ass off because I
Yeah.
knew what it implies. Not because of the study. Good for them. They're researchers in the end. But just what it implies. Like, I can imagine somebody reading the article. It's like, my whole life makes sense now.
That's,
It's
See,
one of
but
these.
isn't this the most popular? Isn't that the popular problem with obesity or anything weight related these days? Is there's always an out that we allow or society allows for these people. Now
Yeah.
it's gotten all the way to uranium. It used to be it's and this one actually made the most sense, right? It's genetic. It's more difficult for some people because some of the genes they're born with. That one was one of the very few respectable ones out there. Then
I
there's the
mean,
ones that just don't have discipline. Some people just do not have discipline, so it's difficult for them.
look at Japan. They got nuked two
Now it's
times.
the chemicals, man. The chemicals in the water making the freaking frogs gay.
Freaking bugs, yeah. Making the freaking faggots fat.
I can
Dude.
just see it.
Look, look. Japan got nuked two times. Are they obese? Is the majority of the population fucking sumo wrestlers?
Well,
No.
well, no. Here's the thing with Japan. Their food there, their diet, okay, consists of sadness. And now everybody knows, okay, sadness burns fat, okay?
Mm.
Okay,
So,
you need to stop pushing this. This some people actually believe it.
no, dude, they eat fish, they eat soy. The diet in Japan is like nothing. Like, that's why they're not fat. Like, there's no other reason. Like, if they change their diet just a little bit, they grow fat. Look at the weebs, right? The weebs eat McDonald's, right? And they stay at home all day, and of course they're gonna get fat. But the rest, dude, Japan punishes you for being fat. That's another reason not to. Imagine paying money, paying a tax for being fat. It's beautiful. Japan got this. That's one thing they got right. They force you as an employee to do this and the more like every 3 seconds, right? And then they tax you for being fat. It's beautiful.
What do we have? Fat shaming.
No,
We have entire conferences and diversity trainings about it.
to me, I'm so pro fat shaming. I'm fat. Please shame me, please, because that's what's required. Shame is good.
I miss the days of fat shaming.
Oh, they still exist as far as I'm concerned. Like, but
I also miss those days. miss the
Yeah.
days when you could expose someone's flaw to somebody, and you could it could actually be seen as a compliment in disguise, right? It's a criticism, but you can learn from it.
Again, as
Which
a society, we want to encourage good behavior and discourage bad behavior. That's our job. That's the job of a society. Good behavior is you're on good, healthy, optimum weight, right? That's good. You should go for it. That's the target. And anybody who was fat and lost the weight would vouch for this. But the people who are still fat are the ones who'll be like, blah, 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 blah. And I'm okay with people who are fat and are okay with it. I'm fat. I don't want to lose the weight. I don't care if I have diabetes. I love this my sandwiches. I live for food. More props. Thank you. Thank you for being an honest individual. But trying to feel good from me because you're fat, I'm sorry. You have a problem. And it's not just your stomach.
I'd like to ask this. We are discussing all of these exits, all of these evasions that people have as excuses for why this is happening to them. What do you think the biggest reason for why people are the way they are right now, obese, is? My money is on Fortnite. It's addicting. One of the biggest problems in the world right now is adopting a sedentary lifestyle, right? And the point is that it's the game developer's job to get you to sit in that chair as long as possible, but it's not technically their fault, right? You have free will in order to be able to determine how long you're going to sit in that chair. And can I just implore people to every couple of hours at the least, I would say every 15 minutes after you die, get up and do a lap around your room. Do it with your phone in your hand. Just get up. Let the blood flow through your veins. Don't let your legs fall asleep. Have you seen those people? People that like their legs fall asleep while they're playing, and they actually can't get up. They have to use the restroom, and they actually physically cannot walk to the bathroom. It's that bad because people are not moving. And so I said that as a bit of a joke. I blame Fortnite, but I blame how people aren't moving anymore. That's a real problem. It's not just a joke at that point that people were making years ago. This is actually happening. If anybody's ever seen the movie WALL-E, where people are just sitting there in a chair and having food delivered to their mouths, and they never have to move for anything. They're literally sitting on a toilet. Everything's being done for them. That could be the future, and it's going to be labeled as innovative, but also dangerous.
it is happening. It is happening right now because a lot of minors in Kuwait are having aneurysm in their fucking legs from eating too much and sitting down on their asses for a long time.
Actually, it's funny that you mentioned the kids. I remember me and my brother like having a talk about this, and one of the saddest things in Kuwait is seeing a 5-year-old with the cheeks, with the double chins, with the beer belly, right?
Yeah.
And you see them walking around and shoving food in their face and swiping in their iPads and their iPhones and all of that, and you sit there and you're like, oh my god, like how is this possible? And it's parents being too weak and technology being so tempting, right? You're not far off on the Fortnite example, mainly because our generation, the generation that wasn't part of Fortnite, have had another thing. It's called MMORPGs. It's called MOBAs. World of Warcraft, all of these things. You have your Cheetos and your Mountain Dews, and you're sitting there and you're just spending hours upon hours just sitting there playing that game. And there goes your social life. There goes your weight. There goes everything. Like I was talking to my dad the other day, and he's like, I have 4 like friends, and that come to me and complain about their kids because all they want to do is like play video games and eat, and that's it. And then they do the operation, right? The same operation Aziz did, and then they don't stop. They do the same thing, just with less weight. And it's a problem on multiple levels. It's not just the weight. It's It's lack of productivity, lack of achievement, lack of purpose, lack of societal standard. What happens when the war hits to that guy? Like there's nothing. There's just they're just stuck in that reward system that the game developers they know how to up your serotonin levels with the rewards and the wherever, and then they go outside wanting the same reward levels and they don't get it, so they go back inside and they just stick their food in their face and they just and boom, there it goes. It's a chemical equation, and the result is disaster. So yeah,
We have to return to the roots of whoa, lag.
Yeah, like for me too. So, are we back here? Are we back
All
from
right,
the lag?
everything good? All right,
Yep.
Go on.
I am. We must return to the roots of shame. I agree with you that shame is a very good thing. And I agree with it because I think it's something that's unfortunately been stripped from the youth all around the world, specifically exponentially in the first world where everything's about coddling now. You can do no wrong or you can do every wrong, in the sense that if you say this about somebody, you're going to get suspended or expelled for it. And I miss the days also, not only of fat shaming and of any shaming, but just of repercussions for actions, right? Because that's what this should be. It's if you don't take care of yourself, you let yourself go. And once you let yourself go, then it's all about the stride, the climb to make it back to where you need to be as a weight wise. Let's just keep using weight as the example, but it can be applied to anything. It's if you're not a good person and people call you out on it, you actually have the right now to call them back on it and to call your parents and to call the teachers, and everybody's going to defend you now because you can do no wrong. Everyone's the golden child now. And there used to be something called bullying, which, little known fact, I am actually a fan of. Within reason, right? Everything's good in moderation, but I found that growing up, bullies tell you stuff about yourself. They don't always express it, obviously, in the healthiest of fashions, but they get a point across that you are going to take to heart because they see a flaw in you. And even if they're jealous about themselves, as is often the common narrative that we hear from the people who are telling us not to worry about bullies, they see something wrong with you that maybe you should at least pay attention to. And oftentimes that's weight. And that's an easy one because that's an obvious one, right? All you have to do is look in the mirror. If somebody calls you fat, all right, that's the outside looking in. Now, what do you think about it? Well, we know what the outside of the bubble thinks about it. The inside of the bubble now needs to make the decision about how they're going to adopt that shame to better themselves. And there's none of that anymore because you can literally get suspended for cyberbullying these days about saying something wrong about somebody. And so there's no repercussions for actions, and the ones that exist are way over the top. Especially with kids, right? Bullies will be bullies, kids will be kids, boys will be boys, right? It's
Oh, look, Aziz is talking shit in the fucking chat.
Is he in the comments?
The irony. Yes. I love irony. Irony. Save it from my blood.
He's alive, folks.
See, like, he promoted himself. We mentioned you at the beginning of the stream, Aziz. We took a moment of silence for your sacrifice.
Shout out to Darkrai Q8. Link your channel in the description, Aziz. Or in the chat.
I'll leave you talking shit, Aziz. I'm gonna move on. So about bullies and shaming, like a society that does not have shame is a paralyzed society. like a society where everybody wants to do everything they want, right? So, like, if I can do whatever you want, whatever I want, and he can do whatever he wants, and he can do whatever he wants, nothing is gonna happen, right? If like, let's look at it at a company. If you're in a company and you do stuff like, and you don't get shamed for it, and everybody does stuff and does the same thing, like, things are not going to progress. Things are not going to function. Things are not going to move. Productivity rates go down. There's no discipline anymore because there's no shame to enforce the discipline, and it just becomes an outright disaster. So that's what what the new generation wants. No shame, no whatever. Just put it aside. But speaking of race car, John Harlem, in the comment sections, Louis, why don't you tell us about a certain governor?
Okay, I'm lagging. I heard governor, so I'm gonna take that as a cue.
Go ahead.
That on
go
me?
ahead. Yes, it is.
All right, so something pretty hilarious happened today. Maybe not necessarily in a good way. I don't think this will go far, but it's worth mentioning. So a certain governor of Tennessee, let me remind myself of his name real quick. It is Bill Lee. Yes, the governor's name is Bill Lee. You cannot think of a more generic name if you tried, if you put it in a name generator. Bill Lee over here is the governor of Tennessee, and he has mandated a certain amount of days that the state has to honor as holidays, or special observations memorializing people like Abraham Lincoln, military veterans, Andrew Jackson, Robert E. Lee, who is also a controversial figure dating back to the Civil War. But the newest addition is a man by the name of Nathan Bedford Forrest, who, if the name sounds familiar, it's because it kind of is. He's the founder of the KKK. And that's all I have to say about that, really.
So, first thing I need to understand about this.
Can you guess how people are reacting?
First thing that's confusing me about this is, like, did that guy do anything else besides founding the KKK? So is there a reason to honor him?
Not that's mentioned, no. He had, he was a military leader during the Civil War times. And so there's that, but he was never as prominent as like Robert E. Lee or something. In fact, he's most well known for being the first Grand Wizard. So it's like if you look up Childish Gambino or something, it's like he's an artist, or he's a musician, but he could also be an actor. But that's not what people go to him for.
Well, yeah. Founder KKK gets a memorial or whatever. Like, I kind of want it to happen because there's a current trend right now. Abortion bans from certain states. This guy gets a statue, right, or whatever. And most importantly, liberals cry. And in this day and age, I want liberals to cry. I don't care much about the KKK, but I do care much about liberals crying. So, like, balancing.
And that is how people are weighing this, believe it or not. It's because people see it as another win. Like, the liberals see it as, if this passes, this is a win for the alt-right. And thus it translates to being a win for racism and bigotry. And the funniest part is, the most ironic part is, usually they are so dead wrong about this, because the SJWs, the liberals, will call anything alt-right. They'll call anything racist. They'll call Ben Shapiro racist and sexist and all these things. And they never have a point. The most ironic thing is, now they actually have a point with the racism card especially. But because they've already dug such a huge hole for themselves, nobody takes them seriously, and everybody kind of wants this to pass just to irritate them. Because you can always retract it later, right? It's an individual state. Chances
Oh,
are that type of legislation for racism is not going to stand for too long. But just to get the point across, just no, right? It's like, fine, you guys are so annoying. Let's honor the KKK for a year, right? Fuck it.
actually, this is an interesting point. Did the liberals reach the point where they became the boy who cried wolf? The classical story.
That's a great way of putting it. That is a
Yeah,
great way of putting it. Actually.
and most importantly, like everybody assumes because the liberals have the media, right? That that they have the popular vote, right? Everybody like the polls always say the Democrats winning, blah blah blah, all that good stuff. But if this passes, what this tells me is that the conservatives have a strong influence in the U.S. and continue to grow in influence, and that's their way of counteracting the fucking liberal agenda. Also, Stoop, you fucking dumbass. Of course, we have fucking black people. You fucking dingus. What the fuck? In any case,
I don't know, Trillian. Have we ever seen a black person on stream? We've seen black Americans. We have not seen black Kuwaitis yet. You have any black friends you could bring on by chance?
A friendly reminder to our U.S. audience: we are not white. Okay, so go away.
Yeah, you can't bring the race card shaming here.
Like,
you can try to get away with it with me, and rightfully so. But I doubt it's gonna pass with them.
Now, are Spanish whites? I'm not sure.
I mean,
questions for later, right? But
it's even worse because no. It's even worse because it happened to me the other day. Somebody said to me, or they asked me what I was, and I said, "Oh, I'm Spanish," and they're like, "I thought you were white."
It's one of these things. Like, here's the thing about racism: you don't know when it begins, you don't know where it ends, and you don't know what the spectrum is. All you know is that white is bad. Is it white skin? Is it white heritage? Is it being rich? You don't know. We don't care. It's just being white is bad.
If it's white, it's not right.
Yeah. Is it white German? Is it white Spanish? Is it white? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just, if your percentage of melanin or whatever the fuck you have in your skin that makes you black is low, you're bad. It's all the sunlight getting absorbed, or getting reflected, or whatever the fuck the science is, makes you bad.
I mean, if you want to be black,
white people may be scary, but I think gingers are otherworldly.
Oh, yes.
Hold on, are gingers white? Like considered white? Because
they're their own.
Like. No, think about it. If they're considered white, they're probably the people who are most discriminated against in meme culture. So,
dude, gingers
they are, bro. People claim they have no souls,
right?
All because of one South Park
episode. They are transparent, goddammit.
Right, and if they have no souls, according to the Catholic Church, you can enslave them, right? So, so there's so many moral ambiguities.
Let's go with that.
It's like the
really
moral
ambiguity in the Bible, bro.
No. Like
I haven't read it because I don't have to because I'm Catholic. But
here's how. Dude, that's how the Spanish and the Portuguese dealt with the Black slave crisis, right? The Native Americans have souls according to the Pope, so you couldn't enslave them, so you kill them instead. But Africans, according to the Pope at that time, did not have souls, so ripe for enslaving. Because again, it's against Christianity. If you have a soul, you can't be enslaved. Well, you can't be Christian if you don't have a soul, right? So ripe for enslavement. It's a beautiful loophole that Catholics found to just fund their slaves.
do you find? How do you become one of those people who decides who has a soul and who doesn't? What degree is that under in university?
Social studies.
Questions. That's all I'm saying, bro.
Moving on,
Not enough
though.
answers.
Moving on. Um, in the comments, people have been mentioning Area 51. So let's get on that. Let's get on that.
All right.
Conspiracies.
So there was a. This is my favorite thing that happened this week, bro. Period, point blank. Nothing even comes close. So I'm gonna give you my side of this. I was really bored, just scrolling through Twitter once, one jolly afternoon, and then all of a sudden I see Area 51 trending, and I'm like, oh no, this can't be good. I click on it, and it has its own moment because Twitter has moments, and then like it basically sums up the entire situation. In short, on people's own volitions, the Twitter crowd decided on their own that they want to invade Area 51. And it was at the top of the list trending throughout the world. That a bunch of random Twitter tards want to storm Area 51, wherever it is, and find whatever it is that's hiding inside of there. And a lot of theories were making the rounds, right? Because this was trending so hard. Aliens mixed with humans, aliens mixed with thick females. So like hot, like people had fantasies, people had ideas about what they're gonna do when they break into Area 51 and break out the aliens, or if it's like some secret government conspiracy, if it's some super atomic bomb. Like the amount of things that people were theorizing in Area 51 was crazy. And I've never had a better field day in my life than just reading through all these suggestions. But it gets better, right? Aside from the fact that a bunch of random people on the internet decided just out of the blue, we're going to invade one of the most guarded American places in the country, they decided, or all of a sudden, these other hashtags start popping up within hours, and they start pushing Area 51 lower to the bottom of the list. And it was one of the quickest turnarounds I've ever seen with anything ever, with any trend. All of a sudden, these trends that have nothing to do with what's happening right now, with like pizza rolls, with hot pockets. There was a lot of food related stuff with pizza rolls, hot pockets, more sports stuff, but old news, stuff that had already happened weeks ago. It was all piling on top of Area 51 to try to get it out from the top 20 most trending things on the planet. And the funny thing is, a couple hours later, another Area 51 hashtag begins, the Area 51 cover-up hashtag. That the U.S. government is creating a bunch of a bunch of other hashtags to combat the Area 51 hashtag, and as a result, it creates another Area 51 hashtag that's accusing the U.S. government of trying to cover up the original Area 51 hashtag. Try to go through this logic with me. So it's actually just thoughts so far.
First of all, we have to say this. What is our Area 51 conspiracy? You guys in the comment section can participate too. Like each one of us has to pick one. What are they doing in there? Okay, let's do it. I'm gonna go first. Give you guys time to think. What I like to think is happening in Area 51 is a bunch of people just playing strip poker, but they really want it to be private. It's one of these things, right? You pay a lot of money. The 1%ers, right? They come there and they don't want what's his name, Bernie Sanders, to be in on it, right? So they go in and they sit and they do their things, strip poker and everything, and then they like like just discuss what other people are thinking about Area 51. It's like they think there are aliens in here, man, as they're stripping, you know. just, just just thriving off that. It's just one of my favorite things is seeing people obsessing about conspiracies that don't exist and then talking about it. So even though I do think something fishy is going on there, I just can't help but have this as my favorite.
You want to go next?
Well, I do. Yeah. Well, I do think Area 51 is mostly related to confidential military projects, as known as UFOs, unidentified flying objects. Oh, it's an alien ship. No, it's just a military project. I do think it's an empty land made for explosion experiments, testing new rounds, testing new vehicles and stuff. But I do not believe that there is any kind of alien experiment or fucking Avengers or some shit.
My idea for what is an Area 51 is actually just that it's just an area that they created in order to make it seem like they have some sort of secret government weapon that can wipe out anything or anyone on the face of the earth. But they don't want it to get into the wrong hands, so they make it seem like it's uber important. But in reality, they have nothing. In reality, they just have, because if you actually drive up to like the road that leads to Area 51, it
Yeah,
seems
they
a
have
little
snipers.
fishy to me. But they have those, but it seems a little fishy how like if and there's proof of this where if you look at the little hill where it's supposed to be at, there is just usually there's one truck that's always parked there, and you like it's just a truck. There's just one truck that's there, and it supposedly it's supposed to follow you. Like it's supposed to if you're driving this way, it's supposed to drive parallel on the mountain to like track you, right? Until you go too far. But it's just, it doesn't seem like a heavily guarded place. But the mystery shrouding around it is fascinating to me, is clearly fascinating to many other people. But I think it's a hoax. Like I think it's an area that the US uses to try to scare its citizens and its enemies alike. To make it seem like there's something there that's much greater than what it is. Either that or it is aliens playing strip poker. Yeah, who knows?
Dude, if there are aliens there and people find them, I would be all for that for one reason, because everybody would be looking to their religious leader of choice, and they'd be like, right, and the religious leader would be like, it says so in the Bible, and just I can imagine it, just the entire uproar. You said there weren't aliens. Would you look at that? You know, what is that? And they're like, actually, they exist. They're called in the Bible. That's the Plutocarians. See, there's this one verse about the Plutocarians, and they just try to swing around it. It's one of these hilarious things, but
I can imagine the first question they would ask the aliens. Is the Earth a sphere or is it flat?
oh, my favorite thing, about the Twitter thing, the Area 51 Twitter thing, right? So people trend Area 51, so the US uses their Russian bots in order to quell it, right? But then people just PewDiePie that shit up again, and it's just it's a wonderful interaction to see. I repeat, the historians of the next era are gonna laugh their asses off. There's too much content to write about. It's beautiful. But yeah, speaking of
It's hilarious to me because it just it like like I said, this is my favorite story from the week, and it's because it's certainly what I expected the least out of anything to happen. You know, obesity story, uranium, you know, and any sort of revolt or riot going on. Like you expect that. The fact that a mob of randoms decide that they're going to not only discuss Area 51 on a public platform, but decide they are going to invade, and then they get shut down, and then they fight back and get back to the top, and you know there's just some people either in Area 51 or government agencies just like, wait, we shut them down and they're back again? This wasn't supposed to happen. They weren't supposed to take this that seriously. It's like, are we going to have to start sending out the men in black? Are we going to have to start flashing some people? Like, what if this actually goes through? And because it's just up in limbo right now. Like, what if a group of people decide we are going to attack Area 51? And then what? The snipers start firing. That truck actually like turns into Transformers and starts like a rocket cannoning them or something. Oh my god! Like it beautiful. It was just beautiful.
It's these things that make me happy that World War III is a bit further away. Right? It's like we still get to experience these fun things, right? There's just things you can laugh your ass about. But speaking of laughing our asses off, how is your US president, Mr. Louis?
He's doing great. Well, I don't know if great's the right word. He feels great. His hair's great. His mental state is to be determined. What exactly are we discussing with Trump this time? There's so much. There's so much that happens on any given day.
The visits, the aftermath. You know,
so he went to a
yeah.
The what?
Where did he go? Come on, you tell me. It's your country, man.
Let me look. Let me do some research here. Oh yes. Remember, he went to North Korea.
There we go.
Weird. I actually kind of forgot that for a minute. Like there's so much that has been happening this week. Yes, this is technically last week's news, but the aftermath is just kicking in now. Trump went to North Korea, the first U.S. president to set foot in North Korea, and it went surprisingly well. Granted, we don't know a bulk of what happened behind the scenes. There was a lot of news coverage that was refused from entering with them. There's plenty of videos of reporters trying to follow Trump and Trump officials and Kim Jong-il together as they were holding hands, walking into buildings together. And so a lot of people are gaining the similar perception as they do with Trump and Putin, where they discuss things in private and out in the open, they're just very quiet about everything that happens. And so the aftermath is to be expected that Trump and Kim Jong-un are planning something and or are deciding on something, and or Trump is just exposing U.S. information to Kim Jong-il. And even if it was the first U.S. presidency that's successful in making it to North Korea, how is that going to hold up? And so there is a bundle of a very predictable news coverage still circulating about it. And more than anything, I'm interested on how the outside looks at this, because the inside, the country, it's just rinse and repeat. It's the same thing as Putin. It's the same thing as the Russian situation. There will be outrage for a few weeks at most. It'll get recycled once something with North Korea happens again. But for the most part, everything is still innocently valued at the moment.
The main thing I like about this is how people are reacting to, like, it's like everything that Trump does is bad, no matter what, right? He hugs a puppy, he's bad. He salutes the flag, he's bad. He doesn't salute the flag, he's bad, right? And it's like nobody's trying to just cut the man some slack. In the end, it is a stressful job, right? And he's the first person to try to mend things with North Korea, and the geopolitical implications of doing that is great, because if you clear out North Korea, there goes China's puppet, right? That's one less communist state in the world. And if things start improving for North Korea and somehow the Koreas unite for whatever reason, things get interesting, geopolitically speaking, in Indochina. And nobody is willing to go past Trump and thinking of just possibly solving one of the worst human rights problems in modern day, which is North Korea. It's impressive.
Well, remember, he's very fed up with, or he isn't, but the American people are very fed up with the notion that Trump made a lot of promises on the way to his presidency. And actually, one of the later promises he made, indirectly, mind you, was that he was going to get along with North Korea to the extent where he was going to make it plausible for them to put down their nuclear warheads. And that is obviously the hot topic, because the last thing that the US wants to do is obviously tick off somebody with nuclear weapons. And clearly that's not the intention. But people so badly want that to be. It astounded me, the amount of people that saw Trump go to North Korea on supposedly good terms, at least at face value, and all they wanted was either there were two factions of people, either the ones that claimed we have to get the warheads gone immediately, not giving the relationship any time to marinate, because if you're going to take a country's warheads, that's a big commitment that country themselves has to allot to you in terms of faith, right? That we trust you enough to basically hand over our weapons, or at the very least put them down. And North Korea has been very stubborn with that over the years. But at the same time, no U.S. president has made the stride that technically Trump has made. So you have that faction of people that are just demanding that something be done about the nuclear weapons. And then you have the people that are so overshadowed by the fact that Trump met up with a North Korean dictator, that they're so proud that he did it that they forgot the whole meaning, the whole point of the relationship to begin with, which is to create good terms with North Korea to eventually have them put down their nuclear warheads. But people are using this meeting as political points. And to me, that's no different, and that's no bigger or smaller of a problem than the other side, because they're both technically trying to use it as political ammunition. And as we know, political ammunition just adds fuel to political fires. And with all of the supposed fake news going around these days, who's to say one wrong article couldn't show up to Kim Jong-il's doorstep regarding the US or something that's happening, and then that just makes the relationship that much worse, or makes the warheads that much farther away from being retracted. So it's a game of chess that I think Trump is trying to play, and we know he's not the smartest player, but the media isn't helping. It's like if you're playing a game of chess and you're relative to the point that people are looking for with the North Korean meeting, because that is the aftermath, is that there was a point and now there doesn't seem to be a clear one.
Interesting thing about North Korea is, see, the problem with U.S. media in general is that it doesn't really cover anything important, right? It covers like just specters, right? There isn't much focus on what matters, right? So their job right now, like all of the liberal agenda right now, is just to get Trump out of office. That's their primary agenda. They don't care what happens to the world. They just want Trump out of office and a Democrat in. And if they have it their way, a Republican would never see the light, like the presidential seat again. It doesn't matter if he's competent. Doesn't matter if he's the best for the nation. We want our team to win, right? They're so obsessed with that. And everybody knows liberals have all the media. So what happens is everything is shady for the person who wants to be educated on the topic. There's no good sources. And what happens here is that North Korea has not only to battle their existing current circumstance that they want to get out of, they also have to battle the entire world's perception of them, right? And what I'm happy about Trump is that Trump has spent his entire life battling media's perception of him. So he has more experience technically than other presidents. And he knows, for example, not to bow to public pressure. He knows to, like, there are a lot of things that he does correctly because of his experience as a celebrity. It's one of these interesting things about Trump's presidency that I think should be carried over by whatever president that comes after him. Has Trump apologized about anything since the start of his presidency?
No.
Exactly, right? He takes strong stances, and he tries to fulfill his promises. He did not do all of them. It's fine. It's 4 years is too short, right? But he is doing a lot of correct things, presidentially speaking. He is not a great individual from a moral standpoint, but I can see like he's making a strong case for his reelection. It's
a promise he made.
Yes.
It's a promise he made, the North Korean promise, and he's beginning to deliver. And so that's case number one for the reelection. The wall seems like a long shot still, but there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to keep pushing for it one way or another. But whoever's in his cabinet and whoever's in his team clearly told him to change direction, steer the ship elsewhere, because you're continuing to run into, you're the Titanic here. You keep running into that igloo and slowly sinking. But if you go to North Korea, it's like, how can anybody get on your case about that, right? Both the Democrats and the Republicans have been trying to crack that egg for years. They've been trying to solve that puzzle. And imagine if you're the one that does it. Trump's already going to be put in the history books for multiple reasons. This is probably the most admirable.
Yeah. To me, I remember the first time this was discussed, like, Trump and Kim Jong-un shaking hands and all that. And I remember I was with one of my friends and we were in shock and confusion. Like, Trump did that? Out of all the presidents, Trump did that. And then, so I followed the person who made this possible. It was, I don't remember him, but it was a black individual. And according to him, it's like, I was contacting Obama throughout his presidency saying that Kim Jong-un wants to talk. I never got a reply. Trump replied when he got the memo. And he replied very quickly. And he went for it. And that guy couldn't believe it. And he was like, you can't believe how much North Korea wants to get out of the mess they're in, but nobody's giving them a chance. Nobody's giving them a break. And here's Trump doing it. And I thought about it a bit. And I'm like, I don't think this was a political move. Like, it wasn't like, oh, I want to keep face. I want to talk to North Korea. It seems like he did it on impulse. And if anything, the cabinet he was in were like, no, don't do that. And he was like, no, fuck it, And it started to make me, like, I remember it started making me think, I'm like, is Trump the most human president we had in a while? Because look, you look at the Bushes, you look at Obama, you look at all these people, and like, they always seem like robots, like made people, The only person who seemed like a person in a while was Trump. He was talking shit, he had flaws, he was doing all these like crazy things. He was making all these weird promises. He was grabbing people by the pussy, like things people can talking about his dick size. Dude, that how humanizing is that, right? And
which he did apologize for, actually. Stoops reminded me that he has apologized for one thing, and it was the grab him by the pussy comment, because he thought that was going to deter his entire campaign. But even then, it was just a simple, yeah, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done it. I was an immature 40-something-year-old man. I'll be better. And that was it.
Yes, that was it. It's beautiful. It is like, I look at Trump, and so far, I'm like, I want more human presidents for the United States, because if you're gonna police the world, like, at least have a human policing it, you know. And Trump so far has been doing all right. You know, it's an unpopular opinion according to the media, but I mean, given the amount of stress that comes with that job, he's been doing okay. And the North Korean, like, if this situation gets resolved, like if Trump gets 4 extra years and he resolves the North Korea situation one way or another, he becomes immortal in the world records, right? Like in the history of the world, he'll have a huge stamp. Like he'll have an achievement list that may eventually put his face on a fucking wall or a fucking mountain. You know, like,
You want to know what's most ironic though? Is a lot of people claimed that Trump was hold on. All right. A lot of people claim that Trump was not fit for meeting with North Korea because of his, simply put, because of his stance as a U.S. president, and because no other U.S. president could make it work. But the media has also claimed that Trump is a big fan of alleged dictators. So he's a fan of Putin. He's a fan of Kim Jong-il. He's a fan of the Saudi prince. And it just occurred to me, actually, that ironically, and this is very in that sense, the reason he's getting along with them so well, based on the media's perception, is because he thinks like them, if that makes any sense. Like, the fact that he's such a fan of Kim Jong-il or Putin as opposed to any other president is part of the reason he gets along with them so well. At that point, it creates a different discussion as far as, like, are they controlling him, or are they, like, you know, are they trying to plot something behind the scenes? Again, a different story for a different day. But the fact that he is that president that has broken the mold in meeting with them on such good terms, as opposed to all of the rest, says something.
there's another factor here I want to add. It's people would focus on one thing, which is all of these three are like dictators. But I want to present something. Putin, like, made Russia, like, at this moment, Russia is like almost out of its national debt. And one of the best things I've seen Putin talk about is that their national bank loans interest at very high rates, 7%. And the idea is national debt is bad, so we want to discourage it, right? So we jack up the price of that, and that way we keep the national interest in check. And his country is almost out of debt. What he also has is that his country is now well-fed, infrastructure is happening, businesses are booming. He is taking care of his country. You go down to the Saudi prince. Now, the Saudi prince is not good by any means of the imagination, but he has a vision, and his vision is to improve Saudi Arabia's situation. He let women drive. He opened the cinema. Like people are like Nicki Minaj is going to perform there, like somewhere in the future.
No way.
I swear.
Yeah,
We laughed. Yeah, I laughed my ass off when I heard about this. But what that guy is trying to do is improve his country's situation. Is it good? Is it bad? I'm not talking about this. Like, his policies, I disagree with a bit. But again, I'm looking at the mentality here. Now you go to Kim Jong-un, not his father. His father was horrible. Him, right? You see the way he's talking, the way he's trying to communicate with Trump and all these people. He seems like he wishes the best for his people. Now, let's go to the so-called non-dictator countries. Let's look at France. People are revolting because their leaders are not representing their people. You look at what's his name? Look at Europe in a nutshell. The immigration crisis that's happening there, right? Like the people don't want immigrants in, right? But the governments are forcing them because of the EU and all that stupidity to flood Europe with immigrants that are unwanted, right? Creating all these sorts of tensions. Like in in our place, we refer to Sweden as Swedistan because of how many Muslims that were immigrated there, right? It's hilarious to us, but it's not funny, right? If you think about it, like that's cultural invasion, like, and what's happening is those leaders are not representing the people. So these alleged democracies that Trump is not too much fans of, like their leaders don't seem to care much about their people.
Well, it also doesn't help that they all collectively hate Trump.
Right? They're not willing to listen to him. And here's the thing about Russia. Russia may not mean this. Maybe they are the greatest enemy of the US or whatever. But what their public stance is, we want to cooperate with the United States. We want to reduce sanctions against Russia and increase trade and like cash flow and capitalism and investments in both our countries. You don't have to be enemies. We can be competitors, right? Healthy competitors in a market. But like again, you see the stances that these countries that are supposedly the enemy are taking, and you can't help but like squint a bit and wonder if that's really the case. Is it just about Trump being dictators, or is he just talking to the people who are the only people who are willing to listen to him?
Well, I'll say this too in regards to Kim Jong Il, because he, with Putin and the Saudi prince, Putin in particular, he was always in the in. Obviously, he was in the in group as far as powerhouses are concerned. The U.S. has always acknowledged Russia. They likely will always acknowledge Russia. And Saudi Arabia has always been there from a distance, and we've always kept our eye on them. Yeah. North Korea has been like that too, but they've always wanted a little bit more. North Korea has nukes, right? Like they have nukes. Pay attention to us. And I remember I believe it was a professor who made a joke once where he's like, Kim Jong-il just wants to be paid attention to. And as juvenile as a summary of that, as that is, oddly enough, it makes sense. Like he's been outside looking in way too much. Like look at all these powerhouses that have nukes and everybody pays attention to them and everybody takes them seriously and everybody reaches out to them. I have nukes. Who's going to reach out to me? Trump's actually, like, I will.
Yeah. I want to add something to this on the dictator talk. Look, immigration crisis aside, Putin and Saudi Arabia, they're improving their people, or again, allegedly. But there was one person that Trump didn't talk to too much. And if he did and was friendly with him, that would be a cause for concern. And that's Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, right?
He's spoken to him on occasion, but you're right. I don't think they're on good terms necessarily. Dude, highly because of the sanctions, obviously.
No, you have to understand something. China is by far, I think, the worst of the bunch out of all of them, right? And the reason they're the worst of the bunch is because of how much fucking like control they have over their people. They're close to introducing that thing. If I don't know if they did already, but that basically a social meter. There's the social ranking you have, and if you're a good law-abiding citizen who says nothing, you get ranked well. And then there are privileges that would be robbed from you if you have low social ranking. You know that Black Mirror episode? It's all over again. They have they want to institute that in China, and the problem with that is that it's a disaster, right? And then you see what's happening in Hong Kong. Hong Kong, just craziness. Like Hong Kong is revolting in thousands, right? Dude, Hong Kong is revolting in the thousands.
That's crazy right now.
Right? It's madness because of these new laws that China wants to impose. Dude, they reached the point where they're raising the British flag, right? Bring Britain back, right? And because of the crazy laws that are imposed upon them. And if I start mentioning the laws, we won't end. So I'm just gonna just leave it there. You guys can do the research, right? But the amount of laws they want to just impose on Hong Kong that they've already imposed on China. And the funny enough, Hong Kong, I have a friend in Hong Kong. He's like, I want to be part of China. People want to be friendly with China, but the amount of limitations that come with that, the amount of madness and government spying and control over the people, it's crazy. And who was the person who Trump is not too friendly with out of all the dictators running around? Xi Jinping, China. Like, like, like I'm looking at trends here. Like, is it a story worth mentioning? Is this a plausible theory? I don't know.
Then it broke again.
So yeah, it's a crazy topic. This current like political web happening. It's weird,
And I dare remind people that history is the strangest story that we have, and people have to remember that Siri just turned on for me again. That's really creepy.
Run.
And she made me lose my train of thought. Beautiful, beautiful, you fucking AI robotic cunt.
that's
Look what you've done.
That's the best way to brain fart, huh?
Look at this, bro. Like, why are you listening? Why are you here?
Dude,
No wonder China doesn't have you over there.
Dude, we're gonna be flagged. We're talking politics. That's banned in YouTube right now. Everybody knows. Where's Mazda when you need him, right? He's gonna attack the salt grinder next. Oh, actually, they're putting things together. We have to shut this down. No, it's one of these things that, like you look at Indochina right now, and you look at you look at China in particular. The scary, like India right now has a lot of tension with Pakistan. Right, they're always like pointing at each other, and both have nuclear warheads, and they're like, it looks like it's like a mini Russia versus US happening in the subcontinent. But India is one of the the fastest growing economies also, and the population growth is big, and they're everywhere, and they're in every IT department. Then you go to, of course, Saudi Arabia trying to get its shit together. You go to Russia, and they're building their infrastructure. And funny enough, like the way I'm seeing it, it's like the only place in the world where things are crumbling and not looking too good is Europe, right? And
But are you surprised?
I'm not. I read this book. I didn't, but I saw this a documentary on this book. It's called like the Silk Road, giving you a history of the Silk Road and how Europe wasn't always this, like for the longest time, the growth of the world and the focus of the world was actually the Silk Road, right? And the nations surrounding it, China all the way to the Middle East, that was the focus of the world. China to Mesopotamia. But then slowly, as more trade networks and the age of discovery happened and the Renaissance and all that, it trended towards Europe. But because the dominant state is the Silk Road, things are shifting back into Mesopotamia. And that's where, and the book theorizes, of course, that this is where things will return to, China and all these places. Like culture goes where the money goes, right? But in any case, because Europe is like declining so rapidly, to me, is it plausible that what Great Britain is doing, exiting the EU, is the right thing to do? Like, a lot of people are panicking, but are they doing the right thing long term? Are they seeing something that others are not seeing? that Europe
Well,
is
I
not the
can't.
place.
Well, I
It's
can't
not,
comment on. I don't feel comfortable, rather, commenting on that. But Europe has a pattern with their outrage, and it was most apparent with Brexit, in that a lot of the people admitted that they voted on something that they themselves did not even read up on. And
yep.
aside from that being, in my opinion, the reactionary mentality of the first world as a whole, I always consider Europe to be the epitome of that, even more than the US, because I feel like the US actually has the opposing party to keep it somewhat in check. It creates a new problem, socially and culturally and politically, but Europe has no stop. It's like the other side's not there to contain them, so they keep getting themselves into these reactionary situations. And as a result, from those circumstances, we are constantly, or they are constantly, but we're also constantly having to help them handle this. Uh, we engage in this debate as to whether or not it's worth it for them to do A or B or C or D. And frankly, I found it to be going in a circle, and that's why that in my opinion has a lot to do with why Europe is deteriorating right now.
Now, there's another thing. Europe is losing its culture. That's more than clear. It's there's a globalist mentality happening, and some part of me thinks that's Germany's revenge for the two world wars, right? You know, if you're gonna put us down, we're gonna destroy the entire fucking thing because they're the leaders of the EU, right? They're the ones just jumping on the hype train. But the thing with Great Britain that I like right now, Theresa May left, right? She couldn't do anything with the Brexit thing. She was anti-Brexit to begin with, and now the new party is coming in, or not the new party, the new leaders of the party are coming in, and there are two candidates, and if one of them in particular is very pro-Brexit, right? And he made like his promises, like if I'm put in charge, very simple. By this date, we're going to leave deal or no deal. Deal being that they leave the EU, but there is some sort of trade deal going on, and no deal being we leave no matter what, right? Doesn't matter what the sanctions are, and the privileges revoked. So what happens is once Great Britain leaves, to me that's the start. You know, that's the start of the death of Europe as the place of culture and enlightenment and thought, great thought, right? The U.S. was built upon immigrants, so when people from all over the world and the Muslim world go to the U.S., they already know how to deal with that. Europe opened their borders in ways that are incomprehensible, right? They broke Greece's economy. They're destroying their culture. There's a lot of stuff happening in Europe that will basically tell me that Europe is unready for anything that's going to happen in the future. And if a World War III breaks out, the first casualty of war will be Europe, mainly because of the factions they've put into them. You know, if you happen to fight like the world of Islam in World War III for whatever reason, you have a lot of population there. If you fight India, a lot of population there. There's no control over this problem, and whenever globalism happens in Europe, because that's the only place that sort of supports globalism at the moment, um, their society will crumble from the inside. And we see it in the yellow vests from France. We see it from like all the people just trying their best to stop this. All the conservative movements going out telling them fucking stop. We don't hate immigrants, but this is our soil. God damn it, right? And I'm very enthusiastic about this because I like Europe. I think Europe is a beautiful place. You know, they have beautiful atmospheres, they have beautiful culture, and like any culture I would love to explore. But and I would love for my children, my grandchildren, and for future generations to explore. But if the culture dies, or What's going to happen? It's scary. It's scary to think
And
about.
and off of that fear, I would like to remind people that if you don't think it can happen in Europe, just know that it's already happening here. It's happening to your little brother over here. There are statues being taken down, doctrine that is being preached as a result, where historical monuments are being recrafted in order to fit more politically correct agendas. And this is one of the few cases where I think that the U.S. actually jumped the gun before Europe, and therefore it's happening here first. But it could very much so happen there. Uh, I would also like to add that with Europe, I've always seen them as, well, I believe actually it was the Pope who said that Europe is for the Europeans, and that sparked some uproar. But he's not wrong. And I don't think it was dissected enough to the point where you can understand what he's truly trying to say. It's just it's a natural soundbite somebody took out of context from something else that the Pope allegedly said. If I'm remembering this correctly, don't quote me on it, but somebody important, one of those religious leaders said it, that Europe is for Europeans. And that's not anti-immigrant. But what that's saying is that Europe is for the people first who were born there, who are indeed Europeans. And then everyone else that's willing to come in and add to the economy, add to the culture and the lifestyle and all of the different social dynamics that comprise the entire continent, have to do so responsibly. But it starts internally with the country or with the continent itself. You can take any country, and in my opinion, most of them are doing it wrong. But as a country, you have to take people in responsibly, and it starts more preeminently with immigration laws. But that doesn't mean just take everybody. It also means don't reject your culture just because you're ashamed of it many years later because of what it once was. That's part of the history. That's part of what it took to get there. So it reminds me of the whole situation of you take 2 steps forward but 3 steps back. That has always been Europe in a nutshell for me.
Here's the thing, and this is important, right? So the thing with assimilating into a culture is, if I'm gonna, let's say I go to the United States, I want to be a U.S. citizen, so I want to go there and try my best, right? Well, first thing I have to do is I become part of the culture. I have my own culture, that's fine though, but I have to respect the other culture. Here's a problem with Muslim immigrants. Most of the Muslim immigrants, especially in Europe, come there from a place of desperation, right? They're not very educated, and the Muslim faith, in a nutshell, has a hard time coexisting, right? It's just part of its nature, right? So it sits down, and whenever like Muslims sit down and make a group, they band together, and then they want representation, and then they want control. It's just part of how it goes, right? It can be toned down. More educated Muslim people always like preach to each their own, all the actual Islamic values. But the mentality of the regular Muslim man is that they want to be the dominant culture, and they want to push for that, right? So actually, just to balance things out, the last Ottoman caliph, right, who was very educated in religion, actually like envisioned a world where, according to him, all God's prophets can coexist together and with their religions. Basically saying that there is, as long as people are worshiping and are happy and are pleasant, they are within God's grace. That's what's basically what he was talking to. But that's a piece of information on the side, right? So like the Muslim immigrants refuse to assimilate. They want people to assimilate within them, right? And that's the predominant immigrant population right now in Europe. Now, I don't know about you, but if you enter a new group of friends, right? Do you force yourself upon them, or do you figure out what makes them tick, what's their flow, and then you try to adapt to it? That's the most practical way to enter a group of friends or a new group of friends. Society is not much different. It's just on a larger scale. So what happens is, what Europe is doing to itself is it's forcing itself to fit the new guy in. And you never do that. And it's not a matter of Europe is for the Europeans, because if you think about it, Constantinople belongs to whoever formed Byzantium all the way back. God knows what culture that was, right? But people took it over. It doesn't matter what are the people themselves, what is their lifestyle, what is their culture, and that would be the what is Europe is for the Europeans, right? It's not a matter of who came first. It's who's there right now, and what do they think of things? How do they approach life? What do they eat? How do they clean their clothes? How do they greet themselves? What drinks do they enjoy, right? All of these things, you can't take it away from them. You can't force yourself upon them. And if you decide to live with them, you have to follow their rules. If you enter somebody's house, your rules. Everybody knows this. But somehow these immigrants, because of their lack of education, because of their desperate circumstance, because of their need to actually be dominant, are taking over. And Europe is just laying there and letting them do it. And that's the big problem here.
Speaking of the immigration crisis in Europe as well, there is something major that I think Europe can also learn from. Maybe not necessarily replicate, but this is something that you can observe, that everybody can observe from a distance, because it is going to result in a country that has tolerated this for a very long time finally taking a stand and putting their foot down, and it's going to make a lot of rounds. And the Immigrations and Customs Agency here in the U.S., or ICE as we know them, is going to be making raids on illegal immigrants as soon as this Sunday.
Wow, okay.
They planned it several times earlier, but because the word got out, they decided to retract, and they decided not to do it. This time, supposedly, they're going through with it. There has been no cancellations whatsoever. Before, they used to cancel it a week in advance. This time, it seems they're really going through with it. And what's going to happen is immigration's officers are going to come, and they're going to basically knock on a bunch of doors and see who's who, if depending on their records. And I'm expecting it, like many other Americans, to be a sad day for many individuals. But there's no doubt in my mind that a lot of other countries are going to be watching in terms of how the immigration crisis is going to be handled. Now, as I mentioned, it does not have to be to this extreme. This is the Trump administration's method of doing it. I would argue there are more healthy methods of doing it, but considering that we have 11 million undocumented immigrants here, I believe just in California alone, it's going to be hitting all the major cities. And these ICE raids are being protested heavily by people all across the country, including police officers, military personnel, mayors, politicians. And I would just like to remind everyone that to go up against ICE is to go up against the Trump administration, and thus to go up against the law. So there are several mayors. There's a mayor in Chicago, or the mayor of Chicago, for example, is claiming that police officers are not going to comply or work with immigration officers. That's within their rights. They don't have to help immigration officers. That's true. Unless they are requested to and or ordered, mandated to by the immigration officers. So in other words, the bypass to this is if immigration asks you to help them, you can say no. But if they tell you to help them, you have to help them. Otherwise, you're going up against the law. And so this is going to, in my opinion, make so many waves, so many rounds. in the immigration debate globally, because we have been a country that has tolerated this a lot. We've opened our borders a lot, and we're finally taking a real stance. So it'll be interesting. And as I mentioned, I don't expect Europe to do the same. But if anything, it'll be interesting to realize how other countries evolve after this, after seeing this play out. Because it's going to be huge.
The key word here is illegal, right? If a country in itself starts bypassing its own laws, that's when the country should implode, right? If the laws aren't respected, there's a problem. Now you can bypass laws, you can work around them, but you need to respect them. You need to give them weight. So if these rates fail, as far as I'm concerned, that shows you a lot about America's priorities, right? And that's a big problem, politically speaking. If a nation is not good enough to respect its own laws, if the people aren't good enough to respect their own laws, that's only an argument for anarchy. And the problem with anarchy is that nobody benefits. No, literally, only the bullies benefit. So, before I proceed, I want to answer a question that Hassan put, which is, do our local sheikhs prosper like the way the Christian preachers or prosper in the US and all that? Mainly no. One, because there is still huge conflict between church and state in the Arabian countries. The state has its own interests, and sometimes it tries to bypass the religion, and the sheikhs try to protest against that, preaching reform or preaching change and whatnot. And the state, being in a modern society that sort of contradicts certain human rights, certain whatever, contradicts the religious preachings, they have to put it under a lid. They have to control it one way or another, right? So what ends up happening is that, look at Saudi Arabia. Any preacher or any sheikh that protests against the state gets locked up, no questions asked. And in Kuwait, their power is much diminished, and in a lot of places, their powers are much diminished. They don't make much money, they don't get much attention, mainly because the Arabian world right now is struggling with its own identity. They don't know what they are, they don't know what they want to become, and there is nobody talking about this. There are only people taking a stance and sitting down and putting their flag in the soil and being that we're that and that's it. We won't talk about it. We won't discuss it. We won't reach a conclusion. We don't care. We're right. You're wrong. And that's how it's gonna stand. And if everybody does that, nobody benefits and nobody proceeds. And that's what's happening. Just a state of intellectual stagnation in the Middle East because of it. So that would be the answer to that question. Quite a mouthful, but yeah.
These are complicated issues. They're multi-layered, multifaceted, and what I often experience is when I think I've considered a reputable answer, it only offers up more questions. And a lot of that has to do from my own insight or self-reflection, and some of it just has to do from, I think I got it, let me review it with this person, and then this person just says something out of the blue that sparks a whole another debate. And then that's it. I'm in this room now. So it's all tied like tree branches, right? The natural process. It's like a tree branch. Although I don't think that's the method you use to solve these issues. But anybody who comes to you and says, I have the answer for immigration, I have the answer. It's like saying I have the answer to world peace or hunger. We have a long way to go, and there is no way that it's going to be clean cut if it ever receives a formal answer.
Again, the biggest problem of this modern day is, despite all the technology we have, despite all the how small the world got, there's still a problem. People are not mature enough to have an actual conversation and asking difficult questions. like the reason the Renaissance was such a popular topic is because people started talking, right? People started like looking around and they're like, okay, we need to produce books, we need to have discussions, we need to find out what the hell is happening here and how we're going to deal with it, right? Uh, and right now in this world, this is discouraged, right? Nobody wants to talk about anything. And anybody who talks about anything is somehow ridiculed or is proven wrong or is mocked or is placed aside. And people just wait for the opportunity to shame them or put them back into their place. And so no, everybody's afraid of talking. Dude, if like, how many people I know, right, who I talk to, and I'm like, you should come on stream, right? You should come on stream and talk about your field of specialty. You don't even have to talk about politics. And what happens is they're unwilling to because they're like, we can't, because if we do, we'll lose our jobs, or we won't get into anything, or we'll be mocked, or we're not smart enough. I heard that one. We're not smart enough to actually enter this conversation. And I'm like, and I just sit there and feel bad because how else are we going to progress as a society? How else are we going to progress as people? How else are we going to get our ideas out and find new things to talk about and resolve? Conversation, discussion. Language is why we exploded as people, but nobody's willing to proceed. Nobody's willing to talk. And more importantly, nobody's willing to listen. It's, I rest my case. I'm not going to stop if I keep talking. Oh, so Louis seems to have lagged his way out of existence. So it's just me, me and you. So yeah, it is getting late. So we may need to wrap this up. But yeah, you've been quiet, Babushka. What do you think about all this? I know you're a listener in a nutshell. You're not very versed in these topics, but do give your take. It's good.
Well, I did see a lot of examples when I went to Turkey. I basically spent a long time in Turkey that I basically lived there for a total of 4 months or maybe less. But what I saw in Turkey was just fucking horrible. Like beggars everywhere, citizens just abusing those beggars, and not giving them what they want. Although, okay, I acknowledge that they are beggars. At the same time, they are looking for any kind of shelter because they are, in the end, they are just immigrants that lost their country, which is Syria. But if you come to think that you have to put some rules for those guys specifically, it is difficult, and it does take time. Also, in Turkey's case, it's very difficult to deal with Middle Eastern citizens and immigrants, also tourists from the Gulf. But I don't think it's going to be resolved in anytime soon, because both sides do not agree with each other, and it's kind of difficult to deal with this problem specifically.
Funny thing about Turkey is it used to be way worse, right? Like my dad would tell me about his trips to Turkey, and he's like, back in the day, Turkey was, everybody was poor, like collectively, right? Now, ever since Erdogan took over, like the economy just skyrocketed. There are people and things and all that, but
You thought you could get rid of me, Trillin. You and your hacks.
I did not do anything.
All right, he got upset because I called him Trillion Lags all those years ago. And he's like, yeah, I know what I'm gonna do.
Just pay
Messing
you
my
back.
connect. I'm telling you, we said too much about Area 51. The FBI
Yeah.
is on our ass. On
they
mine in
got us.
particular. They saw me laughing. They're like, this is not funny. This is Flash. Flash memory.
Where's your manager?
This is too woke.
I would like to talk. Yeah. Blonde white woman with the bowl cut. I would like to speak with the manager.
Is there a manager in Area 51?
Oh my god, that would be wouldn't that be gold? They sneak one of those people into Area 51. She just walks in there like, what the fuck? Who is that? What is she doing in here?
No. What I want is an African American lady. You know, one of those good black, like, you know, chubby Christian ladies, right? Who can't seem to shut the fuck up. Like, I want a bunch of them just going to Area 51. Now that's an unstoppable force if I met one.
And just start commenting on everything they see.
Yep.
Why is there no windows in here? What's the deal with that? What's that thing over there? Why do you have a gun? Why are you dressed in black?
Yeah. No. Let me speak. I have rights. You know,
I don't think so, honey.
You know what? This is a great way to end the stream. I'm happy. Let's just wrap it up there. You know, just from all these political topics up to black ladies.
You don't want to do anything.
It's too good. It's too good of a note.
You don't want to say anything more for fear. For fear that we'll get